Hello and welcome to Unsportsmanlike Conduct, the show where two British brothers talk all things NFL. I'm your host Dom Corbs, and I'm joined with my co-host Nick Corbs. And Nick, we've got a few more audience members to say hello to these days after our semi-viral mock draft video. Almost 500 views, the most viewed video we've had on the channel so far.
Yeah, Dom, people love draft content and they're going to get it. So looking forward to more of it.
People do love draft content, and you're absolutely right, Nu. They are going to get it. And Nu, looking a bit more baby-faced these days. You've got rid of the tash.
Yeah, Dom, November's over. I think, fortunately, I think there was a prime within about the 3-week period, and it just didn't really get much better. But I'm happy that I did it, but I think it's that stage is behind me.
I think it looked all right. I think it looked all right.
Look better on video than in person.
We've got a really interesting episode lined up here. Not draft content, more is coming, but not draft content for the time being. We're looking at contenders versus pretenders. So me and Nu are both going to put forward some teams which we think are going to be contenders, so serious playoff pushes, maybe the Super Bowl winner, or pretenders. So those are teams that are firmly in the playoff picture. We're not going to choose a team like the Bengals who have a 3% chance of making the playoffs. That would be a bit pointless. We're going to look at the teams that are kind of like definitely locked into playoffs, going to win their division, or at least be a very high wildcard contender. Just to recap quickly then, the playoff picture which we've got the Chiefs and the Bills have clinched a spot in the AFC playoffs. We've got the Steelers, Texans, Chargers, Ravens, and Broncos 3 through to 7. And then on the bubble is what they call it. They have the Colts at 8, Dolphins 9, Bengals 10, Browns at 11. But as we get further down, Jets, Titans, Jags, they're only in it on a technicality. They've all got less than 1%. And then in the NFC, no one has yet clinched a playoff spot. We have the Lions in the 1 seed, Eagles at the 2 seed, Seahawks 3, Falcons 4, Vikings 5, Packers 6, Commanders at 7, and then teams like the Cardinals, the Buccaneers, and the Rams have a shot. 49ers aren't dead yet, but 9% is not very likely. So, Nu, kick us off with your first contender.
So my first contender, Dom, and I had to think long and hard about this because I don't want to pick the Chiefs or the Bills because that's obvious. They are some of the best teams in the league. I don't know if you're going to talk about them later.
Are they?
Obviously,
Spoiler.
they are. Obviously, they are. But Dom, for my first pick, I'm going to go with. So it might be. I'm going to choose the Buccaneers. So they're on the bubble, but they do have a higher chance of playoffs than the leading Falcons, which is why I'm including them.
Okay, all right. I'm not okay. I like the shout. Not sure if we've quite understood the exercise so far, but let's hear it.
I was looking through the playoff percentages, and the Buccaneers actually have a higher chance of making the playoffs than the Falcons, who are already in the playoffs. So I think that does count based on your technicalities. They're not a team that's super far out, 3%. They have a 59% chance of making the playoffs, and therefore I believe they should be included.
It's an interesting pick now. It's not where I thought you were going to go for the first one. So you're saying that you think they have a better shot than the Falcons, who are currently sitting at the top of that division?
Oh, Dom, of course they do. I think anyone who watches any Falcons games knows that they're not a very good side. And we're not going to talk about the Falcons because I don't quite know why they're so bad. I think they've got a really strong squad. I don't mind their coaching. But we're going to focus on the Buccaneers for now. And the reason why I've chosen the Bucs is playoff experience. They've had Mike Evans won a Super Bowl, only won a Super Bowl a couple of years back. Baker Mayfield, multiple playoff wins. And then an easy division. So I think they're going to get probably the third seed in front of the Seahawks, who are currently in the playoffs. And so that means they get a very, very favorable Super Bowl early playoff matchup.
Definitely. Yeah. And looking at those NFC teams that they could face, obviously the Lions and the Eagles would be a disaster, but they wouldn't face them because presumably they'd win their division. So then you're looking at, maybe something like the Commanders, who I think have definitely shown their weaknesses. Packers wouldn't be a fantastic draw for them, but you're saying that then you can see Baker Mayfield making a little bit of a playoff push here down the stretch of the season and into the playoffs.
Well, Dom, as a Giants fan, the Giants have won 2 playoffs in the modern era, and they both come from hot streaks from quarterbacks who just manage to get hot and stay hot. And Baker Mayfield can do that. He's proven that he can do that, and I think he can replicate that in the playoffs. He's got a home playoff game first round, and then he's not going to face either the Eagles or the Lions till the NFC Championship game. It's not as hard a route to the playoffs as you would first think. You're probably going to get a worse off team. Even the Packers, I think, is a good matchup for them. And then they're not going to face the Lions, most crucially, until the NFC Championship game, because on the right side of the bracket.
you're aware, Nu, that you can also have a long shot. So I dread to think of who your long shot is if you're starting with the Buccaneers.
Well, we'll find out later. We'll find out later. But
All
Dom,
right, well,
the listeners don't want Lions. They don't want Chiefs. They want a bit more than that. So I think I'll give them something interesting to start off with.
All right, okay. Well, you've come out playing some baseball here. You've come out swinging right from ball one. I'm going to play a straight bat here. I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills are a massive playoff contender at this point. Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level. He had his MVP moment yesterday when he dived for that pylon, the improvised hook and ladder play with Amari Cooper in the snow against the 49ers. He had 2 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown. The first quarterback in history to get all 3 in a single game. He's 26th in big time. He's got 26 big time throws, which is first by a long way. 7.1% big time throw rate. That's insanely high. That's first. And he's only got 12 turnover worthy plays, which is, he's 12th in turnover worthy plays at 9. No, my mistake. He's got 12 turnover worthy plays, which is 9th. There we go. Got there in the end, which is the same as Jared Goff. So yes, there is a few wayward throws, as is always the case with Josh Allen. But this time he's massively increased his big time throws, whilst also managing to try and keep a lid on as much as he can those turnover worthy plays. And really knew he's a one-man army on offense with this Buffalo Bills. We spoke about them a bit earlier in the season, in the preseason, when we said about their receiver core. We were looking at them. I mean, at the moment, it's Keon Coleman, Amari Cooper, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Matt Collins. I think there's also someone else that wasn't on this depth chart that I'm looking at that caught a pass yesterday. Where's a number in the 80s? I don't know. But they've already won the AFC East, 5th time in a row. Chiefs look pretty weak, spoiler alert. This is, I think, going to be their shot to really make a proper push. And it comes at a time when everyone doubted them in the preseason, and it might be a semi-rebuild year for the Bills. Well, they're wrong. I think the Buffalo Bills are absolutely legit this year.
Yeah, Dom, I think you're right to say that. Look at this past week when they beat the Niners in the snow. Amazing game from Josh Allen. Like I said, Baker, quarterbacks win Super Bowls. You hear about defense, you hear about all of this. No, it's fundamentally all about quarterback play. And he's playing at MVP level. They've beaten the reigning Super Bowl champs and the Chiefs. It's a really hard argument against them.
Yeah, they just look like when they're playing like how they played against the 49ers, granted, it's not the same 49ers team that was trotting out to the Super Bowl last year, right? It's obviously not. It is. It's very different. So I'm not saying it's because they beat the 49ers at home in the snow that they're suddenly a legit team. But when you're playing with the amount of confidence that Josh Allen is playing with, when you're playing with the dominance that Josh Allen is playing with, then your team with, I think, the MVP frontrunner now for the MVP award, you can go really, really, really far as a team, I think. And I think this could be the year that we finally see the Bills do it. We've had it so many times. And like I said, with the Chiefs looking mortal now, which they haven't looked before, there's a gateway for the Bills. I can see a gateway, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, Dom, I agree. And can I do another contender quickly?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so my contender is my dream Super Bowl matchup, which is the Detroit Lions. I think Bills versus Lions Super Bowl would be amazing for everyone, unless you're probably a small business owner in either city, in which case, win, lose, or draw is going to be riots. The Detroit Lions are just such an amazing team, such an amazing story, and so fun to watch. Every single game is either a blowout by 50 points or it's close and they somehow pull it out the bag. I think Jared Goff is not playing at a Josh Allen level, like you said, but he's definitely in the conversation for MVP. I think it'd be rude not to say it. More, his name value is dragging them down more than anything. They've got such dynamic offense. You've got the best running back duo, which basically revolutionized the way we view running backs in such a long time. The Thunder and Lightning combo of Gibbs and Montgomery. You've got an elite receiver core, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, and you've got great tight end play, Sam Laporta. On top of that, you've got a really, really strong defense. Brian Barnes, obviously not Aiden Hutchinson anymore, but still a decent pass rush. I saw that clip the other day when they dropped 2 defensive tackles back into coverage and blitzed 2 outside linebackers. They've got amazing coaching, Dom. They've got the best offensive coordinator in the league, probably the best head coaching prospect I've seen in my days, and also the best defensive coordinator in the league, who's probably the second best. He's the best defensive coordinator for head coaching job as well. This is the Lions' Super Bowl window. This is their time. And I feel like the stars are aligning, and I'm backing them.
I agree. I also had the Lions as one of my contenders, and I'm glad you brought this one up as a bit more of a usual selection,
Yeah.
we'll say. But I think no, you're right. Like you highlighted it all. They're just such a balanced team. Goff is dealing, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think the Jameson Williams breakout season has been really key for this offense, giving it a bit more balance. You know, Amon-Ra is a great receiver, but he's quite limited in his usage as that kind of underneath slot receiver. Jameson Williams can take the top of a defense, really kill a team with speed. And yeah, the Sonic and Knuckles combination of Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery, Thunder and Lightning backfield, like you say. And I think what's massive new, and you highlighted that as well, is the Brian Branch addition, because that's what's really helped this defense absorb the Aiden Hutchinson loss, is their safeties, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, can hold up in coverage. They don't need to be trotting out like fourth, fifth string cornerbacks, because Brian Branch can play press man coverage in the slot. He can blanket these elite slot receivers that the Lions come against. And that's a massive pick. That's why I loved that pick in the draft. I hated the Lions' first two picks in Jameer Gibbs and Jack Campbell, who, by the way, are both now studs. I will hold my hands up.
Good.
Jack Campbell, he wears the green dot, which is the sticker on your helmet, which means that you have the communication from the sideline coming into your ears. Basically, the quarterback of the defense. He's playing really well. Obviously, Jameer Gibbs is playing really well. But that Brian Branch pick in the second was an absolute steal. And he's one of the best slot defenders, if not the best slot defenders in the league. He's playing 100% of the snaps at the moment. So I completely agree with you. The Detroit Lions are 100% contenders. But then my final contender before I get to potentially a long shot, pretty simple one here. I've kept this one a bit cleaner than you have, Nu. Maybe I should have taken a leaf out of your book and been a bit braver. But I think off the back of their performance against the Ravens, I think you've got to put the Philadelphia Eagles in here. Saquon Barkley's having an MVP season. Jalen Hurts, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, behind one of the best offensive lines. Saquon Barkley, I don't know why I thought that wasn't going to be an immediate potential MVP contender. And they're running at 5.1 yards a clip at the moment on the ground with Saquon. And he's having massive games. He's backwards hurdling over defenders. I don't quite think that he should win the MVP or anything like that, but he's having an MVP caliber season for a running back. And Mekhi Becton at guard, been a revelation. That guy could not work it out at tackles, been riddled with injuries. He's too big, he carries too much weight. But at guard, he's been really good. He's having his best season of his career. And that's a classic Eagles move, right? Making their strength an even bigger strength. Like, they've not lost a beat with the retirement of Jason Kelsey. I think it's Cam Jurgens has stepped in and been the center. They drafted him to be that replacement like 2-3 years ago. And Quinyon Mitchell, Guantanamo Bay,
I loved
and
him.
Cooper DeJean.
Yeah.
White Boy of the Year potential winner.
Taking over from Burrow.
Unseating Joe Burrow, exactly. They're playing like Defensive Rookie of the Years. And this team is really coming into its own. It's looking incredibly strong. It's not looking like it was last season, where it was a bit of a fraudulent record. They had a massive flop towards the end of the season. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are legit this year, Nick.
Dom, actually, I disagree with you, and they are one of my pretenders for this year.
Oh,
and the
wow,
reason
okay. Talk to me.
Well, so first of all, I do think the record's slightly fraudulent, and they'll end up with an amazing record, but that's because they're playing as the Giants, the Cowboys, and maybe another pretender that I might mention later, the Commanders.
Oh, okay.
And
this is interesting.
The biggest thing is, Dom, I am a Jalen Hurts hater. I am. I'm sorry. I do not rate him as a quarterback, and I believe that if you can stop the run, I think the Eagles are a very limited team. I think obviously you've got A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. Devonta Smith has had some injury problems, didn't play last game, might struggle being healthy into the postseason. But I just don't believe Jalen Hurts can make the plays with his arm necessary to win games. At the moment, they're playing almost Brit ball, old school fashion American football. They're playing really good defense and just running the ball, and it's working. And I've got no problem with that. But I think if they go up against an elite defense that's able to shut down the run and take on Barkley, which is admittedly a very hard thing to do, Dom. Like you said, he's going at 5.1 yards a carry. That's nothing to turn your nose up at. It's not as simple as stacking the box. But if you go up against a Lions, for example, I don't know if he's still going to have that same success. And if they're down in the game and then you can't run the ball because of the time on the clock, and you need Jalen Hurts to throw on his arm, I don't think they can do it. And that's why I think they're pretenders.
See, I don't think they're pretenders at all. I think that the additions of not just the players they brought in, like I said, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Saquon Barkley, Mekhi Becton, but also the additions of their offensive and defensive coordinators in Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio. I think particularly defensively, Vic Fangio's defensive scheme is coming into its own, and Kellen Moore also is kind of redeeming his career by what he's doing in in Philadelphia. And I agree. I don't think Jalen Hurts is an elite quarterback. I wouldn't even really put him inside like the top 7, right, in a vacuum of quarterbacks. I hear what you're saying about Jalen Hurts, and I don't disagree with your criticisms of him. But I do think, though, that he's better than a Jared Goff. Maybe not as consistent, but I think he can do more physically than Goff can. But it's a bit like that with the Lions. Like, they're such a balanced team. So I don't really see the argument that, oh, well, Jalen Hurts is the reason this could all fall apart, because he's got so many things to rely on. He's got Saquon Barkley. He's like a Christian McCaffrey-esque threat from the backfield. He makes them have better numbers in the passing game. He makes them have to play different coverage shells, because you don't want a linebacker covering Saquon Barkley. He'll torch you on a wheel route. So I hear what you're saying, but I think you're putting too much emphasis on what you've seen previously from the Eagles, whereas I'm basing it on this season.
I think that's true, Dom. If anyone loves Saquon Barkley, it's me. My jersey and my cupboard will attest to that.
Yeah,
unfortunately, not for the Giants anymore, which we're not going to talk about because they're not mentioned in this video at all. But
no,
I think what you're saying is true. But like I said, quarterbacks win Super Bowls. You know, there's a lot of defense. A running back doesn't win. I couldn't even tell you the last time a running back won Super Bowl MVP.
No, you're
definitely
right,
not in my lifetime. You know, and why didn't the Titans win the Super Bowl then with Derrick Henry, the best running game we've seen in decades? Again, it got found out. I think you are able to scheme to stop the run where you're not able to scheme individual brilliance, which is why Mahomes is able to be so successful year in, year out with a pretty average team, is because quarterbacks can win and lose games, running backs can't.
That's definitely true. I mean, that is the whole reason why the running back argument has got to where it's got to, and the market has been so dry for running backs, and I'm sure we'll see that swing back. That market will correct. But that's what I'm saying, is that it's not just Saquon Barkley. If you stop Saquon Barkley, well, great. You've still got Jalen Hurts as a rushing threat. You've still got A.J. Brown, who can beat up any corners. You've still got Devonta Smith, best wide receiver 2 in the league. So, I don't know. I think
they're not a bad
I think there's a
team,
bit of division rivalry there with you calling them pretenders as a Giants fan, maybe.
Maybe.
And do you have a long shot? Because I do, so don't worry if you don't. But do you have a long shot for?
Yeah, well, I must admit the Bucks were my long shot. I kind of forgot that we were doing a long shot at the beginning. But there's some teams that I like, but I'll let you just go first.
So I got 2, which we'll rattle through because they are long shots for a reason. But I think the AFC long shot for me would be the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix playing like an offensive rookie of the year. Sean Payton's offensive system is really finding its feet. They're scheming open wide receivers, which is what all the best offensive systems do. Great defense, which is key for playing in January. It's a stereotype. I know I used to hate it when I was kind of like getting into the sport and hearing everyone say these cliches, like, you know, it really matters in January and stuff like that. But it genuinely does. Like, you can see it in teams like the 49ers playing in the cold, like the Dolphins playing in the cold. Like, when you have a defense, you're playing in colder weather, it's really essential. And they're a team really which are built for a, like, hard-nosed, cold playoff game. Do you know what I mean? Like, this team is not going to blow anyone out. They are going to grind out a win by a field goal, win by 6. So that is my AFC long shot. And then my NFC long shot, this is a bit more of a long shot because the Broncos are kind of in with a shot there. I think it's above 50%. But my NFC long shot is the Rams. Only got a 20% chance of making playoffs. So that's why it's a long shot. But I think they're the kind of team that other teams are going to hope they don't make it. An experienced head coach, experienced quarterback, strong run game with Kyron Williams, great passing attack with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, Jared Verse, defensive rookie of the year, Byron Young, Braden Fisk, like a defensive line that can get after the quarterback. Not a Super Bowl contender. I don't expect them to go all the way, but they are someone that I could see pulling off an upset if they did make it in. But they're new pretenders. You've teased some of yours, I've teased some of mine. Give me one of your pretenders.
So, my first big pretender, and I actually actively think this team is not very good, is the Houston Texans.
Oh, I'm glad you put it in there. I didn't want to. As a Texans fan, I was toying with it as well, but I think you're right.
Yeah, Dom, I know you wouldn't like it, and this is getting a personal note, especially after the Jags game. So I think that hit on Trevor Lawrence, I think is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen, and I think he should be suspended for the rest of the season. But I just don't think they're that good. I think they're in a very weak division. And I think that is why their record is their record. CJ Stroud, I'm not going to be like CJ Stroud's fallen off. That's an overreaction. But he's not playing at even a top 20 quarterback this year. He's definitely been below average. The only reason why I think part of his success is Nico Collins, who I think is absolutely amazing. But they're really missing Tank Dell. Joe Mixon is, really, you've seen the mileage on him. I don't think he's the player that he used to be at the Bengals. And I've not seen the development I like from Will Anderson. Sorry, I had a bit of a mind blank there. I think maybe this might be a down year, but I think they're 7-5 at the moment, if I'm correct. And
Yeah,
I
7-5.
don't think their talent or the way they've played reflects that record at all.
I agree. Unfortunately, I agree. The Texans are pretenders at the moment. I said way back when they played the Jets on Thursday Night Football, I said that we were going to lose that game. When I think we were 6-2 and the Jets were 2-6. Like, it was opposite records. Our offensive line cannot pick up a stunt to save their lives. And CJ Stroud is under a hell of a lot of pressure. I'm not worried about CJ Stroud at all. I actually think he's playing quite well in a vacuum. But it's difficult when he's lost Nico Collins he went on IR for a long period of the season. Yeah. Tank Dell's been out. Obviously, we lost Stephon Diggs for the whole season. I think that also for me, the real issue with the Texans is the offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. I think it's infuriating watching Texans game when we have CJ Stroud, who I think is a very good quarterback. Last year, he played like a top 7 quarterback in the league. Now, he's not playing at that level this year, don't get me wrong. But I think people are going, it's a sophomore slump. I think that's a bit lazy. And that's not what you're saying, obviously. But I just think that's what I see online. Like, Bobby Slowick, I've seen it so many times. It's 3rd and long, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7. And we're running the damn football. Like, when it was CJ Stroud's rookie season and it was run, pass, which is, not the modern way of calling plays in the NFL, I was like, okay, he's protecting his rookie quarterback. He's easing him into the game, making it easier for him when he eventually has to take more to take that next step. But that's kind of stuck around. Like, I've not seen, you're talking about the lack of development for Will Anderson. I agree. That was always my concern with Will Anderson. He was not a Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons-esque level player, right? He's that tier below, which is always, tricky with an edge rusher. But for me, the biggest concern is the offensive system as a whole, which hasn't developed. And I think that's really hampering this team at the moment. I think the Shanahan offensive tree is beginning to be a little bit found out, which is why Kyle Shanahan himself isn't really even running it anymore. And I think that there's other ways to run an offense, which I think would really suit CJ Stroud's style of play way more. So I agree with you, Nu. This team is definitely concerning. We're going to get blown out in the first game we play, realistically, in a strong AFC. And we scraped to win against the Jags with Mac Jones as their quarterback. Like, they played us to 3 points. So I think that's a great shout from you. They're not on my list, but I'm glad you brought them up because I needed to have a good old rant about them because it's infuriating watching as a fan.
Yeah, mate, that Jags game was awful to watch. Like, it's bad when on red zone they flip to it and everyone starts going on their phone. And in the red zone, that's how little, like, it was just so uninteresting, such a boring offensive scheme for so much talent. And I think you're right, Dom. I think it's just Bobby Slowick's not utilizing CJ Stroud's obvious and clear talent.
Yeah, and also to the point of that hit as well, like, it was terrible, like absolutely terrible. I've seen Azeez Al-Shaair's come out and said, like, I didn't see it, and I'm seeing people online going, look, if you freeze frame it at this point, by the time Trevor's going to slide, he's already diving in. But, like, just as a side note, like, this is exactly what the NFL is trying to get rid of with these flags. And I know everyone goes like, no fun league, you can't hit anyone. Like, this is the reason why. I'm sorry. Like, people that get, like, clutch their pearls about, it's a flag and, why can't people hit anymore? This is why, right? This is why. These kind of hits need to be eradicated from the game because it's dangerous. It threatens players' lives. It threatens players' long-term quality of life, sustaining serious head injuries. We've seen it with Tua, other players as well throughout history. So I just think it's like, I have no sympathy for it. He needs to be, I think, like, suspended without pay because this needs to be cut from the game. Yeah,
Dom, I completely agree. Yeah, if you just want to go on this tangent quickly, I think there wasn't enough really punishment. Like, he did that awful hit, possibly career-ending, life-altering, and just nothing really happens. It sort of went to the change room. Also, I think fog of war is completely true, Dom. When you're in the game, you want to hit someone, you want to make a play, but it was a clear cheap shot. Then after the game, going over to the opposition sideline, taking off your helmet, swearing at them. I think there needs to be some serious repercussions, not only for him, but as the Texans as a wider team. Because even though it's not encouraged, it needs to be like disincentivization for players for hurting the rest of their teammates. And I think that needs to happen.
No, I agree. I think it's better to be heavy-handed and to come down on these hits too much than to let them slide and almost, let players off the hook when they do them. But, as just one last thing we'll touch on before I hit my pretender, I also think there's a problem with the slide. Like, that's when it happens all the time. Like, quarterback slide, I know because they don't want to dive forward and they're a runner when they get out of the pocket. Like, I get there's rules there which makes it difficult. But we've seen it with Teddy Bridgewater. We've seen it with, countless quarterbacks that when they slide, it's not just that first hit, it's their head bouncing off the turf, and it's like a 1-2 punch. And like, I really think that the slide itself needs to be like looked at, or if there's like something else a quarterback can do, because by putting yourself in that position, like that defensive position, I just think it opens a world of literal pain, unfortunately, for quarterbacks, where you can just get 2 hits in one, really. But anyway, parking that aside, back to the Pretenders. Quick one, because I'm not sure if I would call them a pretender, but the Vikings. I can't work out if they're contenders or pretenders. They're 10-2, and they find a way to win every week. Lot to be said about that. They beat the Cardinals, the Bears, the Lions, and they played the Packers close. All good teams, but the Bears and the Cardinals aren't playoff contenders themselves at the moment. They let the Jags and the Titans hang around for way too long. They lost to the Rams. Sam Darnold is playing well. The offense is humming. They're a very strong team on paper, but there's just some lingering doubts. They're not blowing teams out. They're playing every team down to their level. And I just question if in the playoffs, if that lack of being able to run away with a game and really just dispatch opponents that you're better than is going to come back to bite them.
Yeah, Dom, I completely agree. And I hate to sound really unintellectual about this, because I know we're analysts and that's why we're here. But the Vikings winning the Super Bowl? Really? Does that sound right to anyone who watches the games? Even if you're a Vikings fan, I don't think you'd believe it. I think they've got a strong defense with Flores as the defensive coordinator. I think it's good. I think it's complex. I was proved wrong about that, and I think you were proved right. But again, Dom, I think they've got Justin Jefferson. I think they've got Jordan Addison. But I just don't see Sam Darnold winning a Super Bowl. I know that's terrible analysis. I know that's really boring, very armchair of me. But it is true. I think there is definitely something to be said for that.
Well, I mean, quickly then, just because it links to this one, and then you can give me one of yours, and it links to what you said earlier, actually. One of my pretenders is the Falcons. You kind of said, you kind of touched on it a little bit when you talked about the Buccaneers. I think you didn't want to say weren't quite sure what the issues were with the Falcons. Well, I can go into it very quickly. Kirk Cousins looks washed.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like. His arm strength is not there. Through a really ugly pick six on an out route because there's not enough zip on the ball. He's got questionable at best mobility. I think there was that issue early on in the season with him changing his stance, not having 1 foot offset, not being able to go under center because of that Achilles injury. And I think we're really seeing that lack of mobility again. Do you see that throw where he lofted it up into like quintuple coverage?
Yeah, what, in the red zone?
In the red zone.
Yeah.
And he could have picked up the yards. Like, look, Kirk Cousins has never been a Kyler Murray, has never been a Jayden Daniels, has never been, Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. But there have been points where he's got some wiggle to him, right? Like, he picks up the ball, Kirko chains, he's got that kind of like, when he gets running, he gets going. He had miles in front of him of open space, and he knows he can't run it. And I think when you're not getting, if you have a quarterback with serious mobility issues, they need to be an end of season, an end of career Peyton Manning. They need to be a Joe Burrow. They need to be an absolute assassin from the pocket. And Kirk's never been that. So I think the lack of mobility, despite that not being Kirk's game, has massively hampered his ability, actually. And if they don't win the NFC South, they're not going to get in because that's a very weak division. So they're not going to be a wild card. And the Falcons, the reason why I link this news, because the Falcons and the Vikings are playing each other this week in what I'd like to call the Pretender Bowl. But then, give me one more pretender that you've got.
So my final pretender, I'm sticking the NFC East, and it's the Washington Commanders.
Interesting.
And the reason why I say Washington Commanders is because, first of all, rookie quarterback has never won the Super Bowl. I think the best ever playoff rookie quarterback is Ben Roethlisberger in 04-05, and he won the Super Bowl in his second year. So I think that immediately rules them out. Second of all, if I were to use one word to describe them as a team, I think it'd be simple. I think they've got a simple offensive scheme, very basic. If you're scheming all year, which I'm sure obviously you're, as a coordinator, your eyes on the next game, but you're looking forward to your playoff opponents. You are watching film, watching the tape. You don't need to study that hard to work out what the Commanders are going to do. And I think that's why. I think they're a good team. I think they're a very good regular season team. And I think they're showing promise. And any Commanders fan would have bitten your hand off if you told them, you're going to go 10-6 probably at the end of the year, and you're going to make the playoffs. They'd be over the moon. And I don't think that's any shame on the Commanders. But do you really think that Jayden Daniels, Terry McLaurin are going to go to the Super Bowl? No chance.
See, if we were recording this time last week, I definitely would have put the Commanders on myself. We've heard of the I can never get this
Cliff
out.
Kingsbury.
We've heard of the Cliff, which is in the second half of the season, the offense that Cliff Kingsbury runs, and this goes all the way back to Texas Tech in 2013 and to the Cardinals in like 2021 or whenever he ended up leaving, that start off red hot and don't end that way, right? The offense gets found out. The quarterback relies on a lot to be a running threat. They pick up injuries, a lot of no huddle, which defenses can see the tape on and understand their tendencies. So I would have put them on definitely, but I think the drumming they gave the Titans yesterday makes me hesitate, because I know the Titans record-wise aren't a great team, but they actually are a pretty scrappy team on paper, especially their defense. And they tore them up, and I agree with what you're saying in the sense that like there's some red flags there, which is giving you pause for thought, and they are with me as well. I wouldn't say that they're like a contender, right? But I'm keeping my powder dry with my final assessment of the Commanders, just because I don't know, man. I've been burnt by them already when I said they're going to be the worst team in the league, and they're very clearly not.
It's true. Yeah, no, I'll reiterate what I said again. You know, I you're right. They're a good team, and they beat not a bad team, the Titans. They also lost to the Cowboys, and they should have lost to the Bears. And they're very, very easily out of the playoff picture with 2 wins that they basically shouldn't have got. Actually, sorry, they lost to the Cowboys, of course. Sorry. But yeah, I think Cliff Kingsbury is a good regular season offensive coordinator with a young quarterback. I don't think they're complex enough, much like how the Vikings defense is complex, and that's where it gets all its merit from.
Yeah.
The offensive system, I think it's basic, and you can work it out pretty simply.
I think it's definitely right to raise them. Let's put it that way now. I think it's definitely right to raise them and have some questions asked, because they are a Hail Mary conversion away from having lost 4 on the trot, barring the Titans game they just played. So, yeah, I think cracks are starting to show in Washington. But my final pretender is the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, let's just lay it out with the Chiefs, right? Let's lay it out. Let's lay our cards out on the table here. They've not played good football. In fact, I think they've played the worst football in the Mahomes era. Looking back at their wins recently, Raiders, Kevin O'Connell made an error with the snap, should have won the game there. Panthers played them to a field goal. Broncos needed a blocked field goal to win. Buccaneers win in overtime. Baker Mayfield didn't even get to touch the ball. Falcons almost lost to them. Kyle Pitts break-up pass in the end zone. Bengals, a PI call, which was the correct call. I'm not got my tinfoil hat on here and saying the refs win the Chiefs every game, because I think that's ridiculous. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. But nevertheless, a PI call saved them. And with the Ravens, they won by half an inch with Isaiah Likely's toe being out. Like, I get the NFL as a game of inches. I get every team scrapes wins when they otherwise might have lost, right? If it's a coin toss, you'll win or lose that next week. But we've not seen the Chiefs play like this under Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, and I think two things are possible, right? They either get blown out in their first game, because this is a flawed team fundamentally, or they somehow get it together and win it again. And I don't know which one would be more Chiefs.
Yeah, Dom, I do agree. But what I would say is that they have 3 things going for them. But number one, hate to sound like Tony Romo here, but they've got Patrick Mahomes, who... I don't know, Jim. Here's a guy. Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the NFL. He's not playing at MVP level, but... he's the best quarterback in the NFL, and I think if you say anything differently, you're just fishing for a hot take. You don't actually believe it. Number 2, they've got a really good defense, and the defense does keep them in games. They've lost the L'Jarius Sneed, but they still have Chris Jones. They've still got a good pass rush. They've got George Karlaftis. They've still got a good defense. But most importantly, Dom, they've got a bit of black magic. They've got a bit of juju. And I think that's what you need to win a Super Bowl. You need things to go your way. You need a block kick. You need a bad snap. These are things that need to happen for you to win 4 games on a bounce and make it and win the Super Bowl. Luck is a big part of it, and somehow whatever Taylor Swift's doing from the box, I don't know, to make it go their way, but it is working for them. And again, Patrick Mahomes, you can't count him out. Individual brilliance trumps scheme, it trumps everything, and he hasn't had a good season, but when the lights shine brightest, he plays his best.
You're absolutely right, Nuke. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, and that's the thing. You just can't count him out. So, I put the Chiefs on here, but I know full well that, come January in the playoffs, because they obviously are going to make it with the record they have, he's going to make me look like an idiot. But look, As is the case with any of these things, we got to wait and see. But that wraps up our Contenders or Pretenders episode. If you've enjoyed this, then please subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, because I am going to upload it this time. I do keep forgetting, but I am going to upload it for people like Paddy and Shep that are out there listening. And the rest of our listeners that don't like the video format of YouTube, it will be on there. But either way, if you're listening on YouTube, subscribe. If you're following on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, well, I don't upload it there. But nevertheless, on Spotify, then follow us there. But I've been your host, Dom Corbs. That's been my co-host, Nick Corbs. We've been on Sportsmanlike Conduct. We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.